Your soulmate just made a heartbreaking decision. But they desperately need you to know why first. Don't scroll away, because the person connected to your heart has just made a decision that may look like the end, but the truth behind it is more emotional than you could ever imagine. Your soulmate has been carrying a battle inside their heart for longer than you know, and tonight, something finally broke inside them. They reached a point where pretending to be strong was no longer possible. They made a heartbreaking choice, not because their feelings for you disappeared, not because they found someone better, and not because they suddenly stopped believing in your connection. They made this decision because loving you has awakened emotions in them that they were never prepared to face. Stay until the end, because there is one truth they desperately need you to understand before you misunderstand their silence. Your soulmate has been thinking about stepping back. They may have decided not to message you, not to show you how deeply they care, or not to move toward you in the way they once dreamed. This decision has already caused them pain. Even as they made it, a part of them was screaming your name, begging them not to walk away. They sat alone, replaying every memory, every unspoken moment, every time your energy made them feel safe. They remembered how something inside them changed when you entered their world. They remembered the way you made them believe that love could be different. But they also remembered every heartbreak they survived before meeting you, and those old wounds began speaking louder than their hope. Your soulmate is not running from you. They are running from the fear of losing you after finally allowing themselves to need you. There is a difference, and this message has reached you because your heart must understand it. They have spent so much time convincing themselves that they can live without deep love. They built walls, created distance, and became comfortable hiding behind silence. Then you appeared, and suddenly those walls began to fall. Your presence made them feel seen in places they had kept hidden from everyone. You touched the part of them that still believed in destiny, even though they had tried to bury it. That is why this connection feels so intense. It is not simply attraction. It is recognition. It is the strange feeling of knowing someone before truly knowing them. It is the quiet pull that remains even when both people try to ignore it. Your soulmate made this heartbreaking decision because the connection became real, and real love requires a courage they are still learning to find. They desperately need you to know that their silence is not empty. Their silence is full of words they are afraid to say. They want to tell you that they miss you more than they admit. They want to confess that they check for signs of you, wonder what you are doing, and imagine conversations that may never happen. They want to say that your absence feels heavier than they expected. Yet every time they consider reaching out, fear creates another question. What if you no longer want them? What if they arrive too late? What if they open their heart and you leave? What if the connection they feel is only alive inside them? These thoughts have become so loud that your soulmate chose temporary distance over the possibility of permanent rejection. But distance has not given them peace. It has only shown them how deeply your energy has become part of their life. They believed stepping back would help them forget. Instead, every ordinary moment began reminding them of you. A song carried your energy. A place brought back an old feeling. A quiet night made your absence impossible to ignore. Even when they tried to focus on work, family, or daily responsibilities, their mind returned to you. They began realizing that this connection cannot be erased by a decision made from fear. The heart does not stop loving simply because the mind becomes frightened. This is the truth they desperately need you to know. Their heartbreaking decision was not a final rejection. It was an emotional surrender to fear. They felt overwhelmed by the strength of their feelings, and instead of moving closer, they chose to protect themselves. They thought protection meant distance. They thought silence would stop the emotions. But the universe is now showing them that avoiding love does not heal fear. It only postpones the moment when the truth must finally be faced. Your soulmate has been receiving signs. They may see your name unexpectedly, hear a phrase that reminds them of your connection, or notice repeating numbers during moments when they are thinking about you. They may wake from dreams where the two of you are speaking honestly, without pride or fear standing between you. These signs are not forcing them to make a choice. They are gently reminding them that the heart knows what the mind tries to deny. Something inside your soulmate understands that walking away from this connection could become the greatest regret of their life. That is why they are emotionally torn. One part of them wants to remain hidden because hiding feels familiar. Another part wants to run toward you, reveal everything, and finally stop pretending. The decision they made came from the wounded part, but the love they still feel comes from the deeper part of their soul. You need to know that your soulmate has also been questioning whether they deserve you. They see your strength, your loyalty, and the way you continue moving forward even after disappointment. They admire qualities in you that you may not even recognize in yourself. But instead of allowing that admiration to inspire them, it sometimes makes them feel unworthy. They fear that you will eventually see all their flaws and decide they are too difficult to love. They fear their past will become a burden in your future. They fear the mistakes they made before understanding this connection will permanently change how you see them. So they made a decision that they believed would protect you from their confusion. In their mind, stepping away may have felt like an act of love. They may have told themselves that you deserve someone who is ready, someone who is certain, someone who does not hesitate. What they fail to understand is that love is not about arriving without fear. It is about choosing honesty while fear is still present. Your soulmate is slowly learning this lesson now. They are realizing that making a decision on your behalf was unfair. They never gave you the chance to understand what they were carrying. They never told you how much pressure they placed on themselves. They never explained that behind their distance was a person desperately trying not to disappoint you. This realization is breaking their heart. They are beginning to see that silence can hurt more than an imperfect truth. They are beginning to understand that disappearing does not protect love. It creates confusion, doubt, and unnecessary pain. That is why their energy feels restless. Even if you have not spoken recently, your heart may sense their internal struggle. You may suddenly think about them at unusual times. You may feel emotional without knowing why. You may dream of them, remember their voice, or feel an unexpected pull toward the connection. This does not mean you must chase them. It does not mean you must put your life on hold. It means the bond between you has entered a moment of truth. Both of you are being asked to release old patterns. Your soulmate must release avoidance. You must release the fear that someone else's silence defines your worth. Their heartbreaking decision is about their emotional limitations, not your value. Do not allow their fear to become evidence that you are unlovable. You were never too much. You were simply real, and real love can feel frightening to someone who has survived by staying emotionally distant. Your soulmate needs you to know that you changed them. Even if they never admitted it, meeting you forced them to see the parts of themselves that still needed healing. Before you, they could avoid emotional depth. They could pretend they did not need anyone. They could settle for connections that asked nothing meaningful from them. But your presence awakened a desire for something honest. You made them imagine a future where they no longer had to perform, hide, or constantly protect their heart. That future felt beautiful, but it also revealed everything they had not healed. This is why your connection became both comforting and frightening. You represented the love they wanted and the vulnerability they feared. Their heartbreaking decision was an attempt to escape that vulnerability. Yet now they are discovering that the pain of losing you feels greater than the fear of being seen. This shift is important. The decision may have already been made, but it is not emotionally settled. They are questioning it. They are replaying the moment they chose distance and wondering whether they acted too quickly. They are imagining what they would say if they had one completely honest conversation with you. In that imagined conversation, they would not blame circumstances. They would not hide behind vague explanations. They would tell you that they were scared. They would admit that you mattered more than they expected. They would confess that their feelings became so strong that they panicked. They would tell you that they stepped away because they did not trust themselves to love you correctly. And then they would ask whether there is still a path back to understanding. But before that conversation can happen, your soulmate must take responsibility. Love cannot grow through endless confusion. A spiritual connection does not excuse emotional avoidance. Destiny may bring two souls together, but both people must still choose honesty, maturity, and action. Your soulmate is being pushed toward this realization. The heartbreak they feel is not punishment. It is awakening. It is showing them what their life could become if they keep allowing fear to make their choices. They are seeing that they could lose something rare, not because love was absent, but because courage was delayed. This understanding is becoming impossible for them to ignore. They desperately need you to know why they made this decision because they fear you will believe the wrong story. They fear you will think you meant nothing. They fear you will assume every moment between you was false. They fear you will close your heart before they find the courage to explain. But the truth is that you meant so much that they became terrified of failing you. Their decision came from emotional overwhelm, not indifference. However, you are not being asked to excuse everything. Understanding someone's pain does not mean accepting behavior that continues to wound you. You can hold compassion and still maintain boundaries. You can recognize the connection and still choose your peace. You can love someone spiritually without abandoning yourself emotionally. This chapter is not only about your soulmate's awakening. It is also about yours. You are being reminded that love should not require you to beg for clarity. You deserve communication that feels safe, effort that feels mutual, and a connection that exists in reality, not only in signs and dreams. Your soulmate's return, apology, or explanation must be supported by action. Words may open the door, but consistency must rebuild trust. The universe is not preparing you for another cycle of uncertainty. It is preparing both of you for a more honest version of love. Your soulmate is standing at an emotional crossroads. They can continue following the decision made from fear, or they can return to the truth they have been avoiding. They can keep protecting their pride, or they can risk being vulnerable. They can remain silent and wonder forever, or they can speak and finally know what is possible. The energy around them is changing because the pain of staying silent has become heavier than the fear of speaking. Something is pushing them to reconsider. It may be a dream, a memory, a conversation with someone they trust, or simply one quiet moment when they realize that your absence does not feel like freedom. It feels like loss. That realization will become the beginning of their next decision. And this time, the decision may come from love instead of fear. They may reach out gently at first. The message may appear simple, but there will be emotion behind every word. They may ask how you are, mention something from the past, or find a small reason to reconnect. Do not judge the entire future by the first sentence. They may not immediately know how to say everything. But also do not carry the whole conversation alone. Allow them to show whether they are truly ready. Let their effort reveal their intention. The connection does not need dramatic promises. It needs truth. It needs two people willing to stop hiding. Your soulmate needs you to know that they are sorry for making a decision without explaining their heart. They are sorry for allowing fear to create distance. They are sorry if their silence made you question your worth. They are sorry for acting as though the connection was easy to leave when every part of them was struggling to let go. Deep inside, they hope you can feel the truth beneath their actions. They hope you understand that they were not choosing a life without you because they wanted one. They were choosing what felt emotionally safer because they had not yet learned that safety without love can become another kind of loneliness. Now they are learning. Now they are seeing. Now they are being asked to decide again. So protect your heart, but do not close it from fear. Continue living, healing, and becoming the version of yourself who no longer accepts half-love. Let your soulmate's journey belong to them. You do not have to rescue them from the consequences of avoidance. Their growth must come from their own courage. What is meant for you will not require you to disappear inside someone else's confusion. If this connection is truly moving toward union, it will return with greater honesty, emotional responsibility, and mutual effort. The heartbreaking decision was not necessarily the ending. It may be the moment that finally exposes everything that must change before the two of you can begin again. Your soulmate desperately needs you to know that behind their decision was love mixed with fear, longing mixed with doubt, and a heart that never truly wanted to lose you. They may have stepped away, but emotionally, they are still standing at the door. Wondering whether they have the courage to knock. And very soon, the silence around this connection may be broken, not by another vague sign, but by a real choice, a real conversation, and a truth they can no longer keep hidden. Until then, remember this: their fear is not your rejection, their healing is not your responsibility, and your worth has never depended on whether they were ready to recognize it. The love meant for you will not only feel deep. It will eventually become brave enough to stay. The night after that heartbreaking decision felt different for your soulmate. They expected relief, but instead they found an emptiness that followed them everywhere. Every distraction they reached for seemed to fade within minutes, leaving them alone with the same unanswered questions. They began to realize that distance could silence conversations, but it could never silence the truth living inside their own heart. The more they tried to convince themselves that walking away was the right choice, the more memories of you quietly returned. They remembered the comfort they felt whenever your presence entered their thoughts, the strange sense of familiarity that made your connection feel unlike anything they had ever experienced before. That realization became impossible to ignore. For the first time, they admitted to themselves that what they felt for you was not temporary excitement or simple curiosity. It had become something much deeper, something that reached beyond logic and settled into the quiet places of their soul. Yet even with that realization, fear still whispered that perhaps it was too late, perhaps you had already accepted the silence as the final answer. Those doubts became their greatest struggle. Every day they imagined what they would say if they could begin again, but every imagined conversation ended with the same fear of rejection. They wondered whether you had stopped believing in the connection, whether you had finally chosen your own peace over waiting for answers that never came. Ironically, the very silence they created became the silence they feared most. They started understanding that love cannot grow where honesty is missing. They realized that protecting themselves by hiding their feelings had also hidden the very truth you deserved to hear. As these thoughts grew stronger, something inside them slowly changed. Instead of asking whether they were ready to love, they began asking whether they were willing to lose the one person who had awakened hope inside them. That question followed them through ordinary moments, during long drives, quiet evenings, and sleepless nights. It appeared unexpectedly whenever they laughed, reminding them that even joyful moments felt incomplete without sharing them with you. They discovered that missing someone is not only about wanting their presence. It is about realizing how deeply they influenced the person you are becoming. You inspired your soulmate to imagine a future built on trust instead of fear, honesty instead of distance, and courage instead of avoidance. Although they stepped away from that future, they could still see it waiting in the distance, quietly reminding them that not every mistake has to become a permanent ending. They also began recognizing something equally important about you. They understood that you deserved clarity. You deserved someone who could stand before you without hiding behind uncertainty. That realization filled them with both guilt and determination. Guilt for the pain their silence may have caused, and determination to become emotionally stronger than the version of themselves who ran away. Healing did not happen overnight. Some mornings they still questioned everything. Some days they almost convinced themselves to keep pretending nothing had ever existed between you. But each time they tried to move on emotionally, they found themselves returning to the same truth. Their heart had already chosen. The only thing left was whether they would have the courage to let that choice become reality. Meanwhile, your own journey continued. Without realizing it, you were also learning an important lesson. Love should never require you to lose yourself while waiting for another person's readiness. Real connection grows stronger when both hearts move with honesty. If your soulmate returns, let their actions carry the weight of their words. Let consistency rebuild what silence weakened. Do not rush to erase your boundaries simply because emotions are strong. Healthy love is patient enough to prove itself. Your soulmate is beginning to understand this as well. They know that if they come back into your life, apologies alone will not be enough. They will need to show that fear no longer controls every decision they make. They will need to communicate when life becomes difficult instead of disappearing. They will need to choose vulnerability over avoidance. These lessons are transforming them in quiet ways, preparing them for a different chapter than the one they left behind. Although they cannot change the decision they already made, they can choose what they do next. And somewhere deep inside, they are beginning to believe that the next decision should come from love instead of fear. Whether that conversation happens tomorrow or later, one truth remains unchanged: the connection that brought the two of you together has already revealed something valuable to both hearts. It taught your soulmate that genuine love requires courage, and it reminded you that your worth has never depended on someone else's uncertainty. Whatever happens next will be built on those lessons, not on the silence that came before. Sometimes the most heartbreaking choice becomes the very moment that teaches two people how to finally choose each other the right way. The days that followed brought a quiet transformation neither of you could fully see, yet both of you could somehow feel. While life continued on the surface with its ordinary routines, something extraordinary was unfolding beneath the silence. Your soulmate could no longer escape the truth that every decision made from fear had only created a deeper longing for the one person they had tried so hard to forget. They began noticing how often your memory appeared without warning. A familiar melody, the scent of rain drifting through an open window, the golden light of sunset reflecting across the sky, or even a simple smile from a stranger somehow carried them back to thoughts of you. They stopped asking themselves why they could not move on and started asking a far more honest question. Why had they ever believed they needed to? That question became the beginning of a different kind of healing. Instead of fighting their emotions, they slowly allowed themselves to feel everything they had been suppressing. They admitted that they missed your kindness, your quiet strength, your ability to make ordinary conversations feel meaningful, and the peace that seemed to surround your presence. For the first time in a long while, they stopped pretending that distance had solved anything. It had only delayed the truth. Somewhere deep inside, they finally understood that the greatest heartbreak had not been loving you, it had been convincing themselves they had to walk away from the very love they had always hoped to find. As this realization settled into their heart, another truth emerged. They remembered moments they had overlooked before, the times you showed patience instead of judgment, the times you listened without demanding perfection, and the quiet ways you encouraged them simply by believing in them. They began seeing those memories differently. What once felt ordinary now seemed incredibly rare. They realized that genuine connections are not measured by dramatic moments alone but by the consistent feeling of safety they create. You had become that safe place without even realizing it. That discovery filled them with both gratitude and regret. Gratitude because they had experienced something authentic, and regret because fear had almost convinced them to throw it away forever. Yet healing also required honesty with themselves. They knew they could not return to your life simply because they felt lonely. They understood that if they came back, it had to be with a heart willing to communicate instead of disappear, to stay instead of run, and to choose openness over silence. They spent many nights imagining what that conversation might sound like. They rehearsed countless versions in their mind, but none of them felt perfect. Eventually they realized perfection was never the answer. Sincerity was. They did not need flawless words. They needed truthful ones. At the same time, your own heart was quietly becoming stronger. Even though part of you still wondered about the connection, another part was rediscovering your own value outside of it. You began understanding that your peace should never depend entirely on another person's readiness. Love is meant to add to your life, not become the only reason you feel complete. This lesson did not erase your feelings, but it gave you something even more important: emotional balance. Instead of chasing answers, you began trusting that what truly belongs in your life will eventually arrive with honesty and consistency. That quiet confidence changed your energy in ways you could not immediately see. You became calmer, more patient, and less willing to settle for uncertainty disguised as destiny. Ironically, that inner growth made the connection healthier than it had ever been before. If your soulmate returned now, they would not find the same version of you they left behind. They would meet someone who had learned to love without abandoning themselves. And they, too, were changing. Each day they became a little more willing to face uncomfortable truths. They stopped blaming timing, circumstances, or fear alone. They accepted responsibility for the choices they had made. That acceptance did not fill them with shame, it filled them with maturity. They finally understood that love is not proven by hidden feelings but by visible actions. They knew that if another opportunity appeared, they would have to protect the connection through honesty rather than silence. Somewhere between regret and hope, they began believing that second chances are not gifts automatically given, they are opportunities earned through growth. Whether that opportunity arrives soon or later, both of your journeys are preparing you for something healthier than what existed before. The heartbreak that once seemed like an ending is slowly revealing itself as a lesson that neither of you could have learned any other way. It taught your soulmate that fear cannot build the future they truly want, and it taught you that your heart deserves clarity as much as it deserves love. Whatever happens next, neither of you will be standing where you once stood. Both hearts have changed, both souls have grown, and the next choice, if it comes, will no longer be made by the frightened versions of yourselves, but by two people who finally understand that lasting love is never built on perfect timing alone. It is built on courage, truth, patience, and the willingness to remain present when life asks the hardest questions. That is the future quietly waiting beyond this chapter, and for the first time, your soulmate is beginning to believe they are finally ready to walk toward it instead of away from it. As time continued to move forward, something unexpected began happening inside your soulmate's heart. The silence they once believed would protect them had become a mirror, reflecting every emotion they had tried to hide. They could no longer convince themselves that forgetting you was possible because your memory had quietly woven itself into the rhythm of their everyday life. There were moments when they caught themselves smiling at a thought of you without even realizing it. Then, just as quickly, that smile would fade into regret as they remembered the distance they had created. They finally understood that some choices cannot be escaped simply by pretending they never mattered. Every unanswered message, every missed opportunity, and every conversation that never happened became lessons they carried with them. Instead of making them bitter, those lessons slowly made them wiser. They began seeing love from a completely different perspective. Love was no longer something that should be controlled or postponed until life felt perfect. Love was something that required honesty in imperfect moments. That realization changed everything. For the first time, they stopped asking whether they were strong enough to avoid their feelings and started asking whether they were brave enough to express them. The answer did not come immediately, but each passing day brought them closer to the courage they had been searching for. Deep inside, they knew that if they ever stood before you again, they could no longer hide behind uncertainty. They would have to tell you the truth, that meeting you changed the direction of their life in ways they never expected. They would have to admit that every attempt to move forward without you only reminded them of what they had lost. Meanwhile, your own journey was unfolding in beautiful ways. You were no longer measuring your worth by another person's silence. Instead, you were rediscovering dreams, passions, and moments of happiness that belonged entirely to you. That inner peace became one of the greatest gifts this chapter had given you. Without realizing it, you had become emotionally stronger than before. If your soulmate returned, they would not find someone waiting in sadness. They would find someone who had learned that genuine love grows best beside self-respect. That quiet confidence carried a powerful energy. It did not push people away. It simply refused to chase those who were unwilling to meet it halfway. Your soulmate could feel that shift even from a distance. Something inside them sensed that time would not wait forever. They realized that every meaningful relationship reaches a moment where intentions must become actions. Dreams alone cannot build a future. Hope alone cannot heal broken trust. Only consistent effort can do that. This understanding filled them with determination. They no longer wanted to be remembered as the person who disappeared when love became real. They wanted to become the person who stayed, listened, communicated, and fought for the connection instead of running from it. They knew rebuilding trust would not happen in a single conversation. It would happen through patience, accountability, and countless small moments that slowly replaced doubt with confidence. They accepted that healing requires time, and they were finally willing to give that time instead of expecting immediate forgiveness. Somewhere ahead, the path between your hearts remained open, not because destiny guarantees every ending, but because both of you have grown into people capable of making healthier choices than before. Whether your story continues together or each of you follows a different road, one truth will always remain: this connection transformed both of your lives. It taught your soulmate that fear should never have the final word, and it taught you that real love never asks you to abandon your own peace. If your paths cross again, let that meeting be guided by honesty rather than assumptions, by calm conversations instead of hidden emotions, and by mutual effort instead of uncertainty. The future does not belong to the frightened versions of who you once were. It belongs to the stronger hearts you are becoming now. Whatever chapter comes next, let it begin with truth, because truth is the only foundation strong enough to carry a love that hopes to last. The final chapter of this journey was never meant to be about choosing between hope and heartbreak. It was always about discovering that the deepest love begins when two people stop hiding from themselves. Your soulmate has now reached the place they feared for so long, the place where excuses no longer feel convincing and silence no longer feels safe. They have finally accepted that every decision made from fear carried a price, and that price was the possibility of losing someone who quietly became one of the most meaningful parts of their life. Looking back, they no longer remember the moments they tried to protect themselves. Instead, they remember the peace they felt whenever your heart seemed close to theirs. They remember the comfort of believing that someone truly understood them without demanding perfection. Those memories have become their greatest teacher. They no longer wish they had felt less. They simply wish they had been brave enough to say what was in their heart before fear spoke louder than love. That realization has changed them forever. Whether they reach out tomorrow, next month, or much later, they know one thing with certainty: if they are ever given another opportunity, they will not waste it by hiding behind uncertainty again. They understand that love cannot survive on assumptions. It survives through honesty, patience, and the willingness to remain present even when conversations become difficult. At the same time, your own heart has completed an equally important transformation. You are no longer standing where this story began. You have learned that your value has never depended on another person's readiness to recognize it. You have discovered a strength that cannot be taken away by silence, distance, or unanswered questions. You have learned that loving someone deeply should never require you to stop loving yourself. That lesson has become your greatest victory. If your soulmate returns with genuine growth, your heart will recognize the difference between empty promises and real change. If they do not, you will still continue walking forward with peace instead of bitterness. That is what true healing looks like. It does not erase the past. It simply refuses to let the past control the future. Sometimes life brings two souls together to teach them courage. Sometimes it brings them together to teach them self-worth. And sometimes, if both hearts choose honesty at the right moment, those lessons become the foundation of a lasting relationship. No one can promise exactly how every story ends, but every story offers a choice. Your soulmate must choose courage over fear. You must choose peace over uncertainty. If those choices eventually lead both of you back to the same path, the reunion will not happen because of magic alone. It will happen because two people became emotionally ready to build something stronger than what they left behind. And if your journeys ultimately lead in different directions, this connection will still have fulfilled an important purpose. It will have shown both of you that real love is never measured only by who stays forever. Sometimes it is measured by how deeply it changes the people who experience it. As this chapter closes, let your heart release the need to force answers before their time. Continue living fully. Continue growing. Continue believing that healthy love exists. Trust that the relationships meant for your future will arrive with clarity, respect, consistency, and mutual effort. Do not chase what must freely choose you. Do not fear what is beyond your control. The right connection will never ask you to shrink your heart to make someone else comfortable. It will invite you to become even more yourself. If your soulmate truly belongs in your future, they will return with actions that match their words, with honesty that replaces confusion, and with the courage they once lacked. Until that day, let hope remain gentle rather than desperate. Let faith bring peace rather than pressure. And above all, remember the truth that this entire journey has quietly revealed: the greatest love story you will ever live begins with the relationship you build with your own heart. From that place of wholeness, every future chapter, whether written beside your soulmate or on a new path entirely, will be stronger, wiser, and filled with the kind of love that no longer needs fear to define it. This is not simply the end of one story. It is the beginning of a life where your heart finally understands that it deserves a love that is brave enough to stay.